At the core of any good customer relationship management program is the ability to capture the data that you have on different people. But what happens if the tool you're working with doesn't have a place for the data that you want to collect? Well, today on Blue Cloud University, we're going to talk about how to add additional fields into a Salesforce object so that if we have new data, we have a place for it. Hello, Cloud Dwellers, and welcome. Now, as promised, we're going to talk about something that is relatively simple to do, but it can be complex depending upon what our needs are. And that is to add a new field, a new place to store data in an existing object. Now, of course, in order to do this, you have to have permission, which means you have to be an administrator in Salesforce in order to go in and add new fields and other places to put data within an object. But we're going to talk about all of that and some of the things you need to know about. Let's do that right now. Now, when we're working in Salesforce, we're working with all of these different objects, like our leads object and our opportunities object and other things. I'm going to take a look at contacts right now. And we're just starting off from scratch. We have one contact so far. That's it. It's the recently viewed one. And if I go to all the contacts, yeah, there's Jerry Smith. He's the other one in here. And I want to add a lot more contacts, obviously, to my database. But one of the things I want to keep in mind before I do that is, do I have a place for all of the different data points that I want to be able to store on my contacts? And let's say in this case, there's actually something else we do want to include here that we're not going to be able to do. Let me show you what the current contact looks like right now. If I click on the new button up here, it will take me to my new contact form where I can fill out anything I need. So there's some basic information, right? Things you might expect. The salutation of the person, first and last name, information we might have on how do we contact them, when's their birthday, all sorts of information, how do we mail things to them, what language do they speak, etc. So there's a lot of great stuff in here, but in my organization, one of the things we have is a VIP membership that we also want to make sure that we're able to say to somebody, hey, are you actually a VIP member or not? We want to be able to store this particular piece of data. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to start by canceling out of here. And as I said, this is an admin function. We can't just come in as a user and start adding new fields into these objects. And admin has to take care of that for us. So we're going to put on our admin hat for a moment. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to roll over my gear icon. This allows me to get into setup, which allows me to go in and make those changes to my app. So let's do this. And I'm going to be working on a different object. I'm going to go to the Object Manager tab over here. And this will give me a list of all of the objects that I currently have available to me within my Salesforce org. And in this case, we want to make just a quick change to the contact object. So I'm going to come down to my list and find contact, and I'm going to click on it. Now it's going to be some basic information about what kind of holds contact together, where it was created, all that. I can also control the fields and relationships with this object. I can talk about things like page layouts. Where do things show up in the form? We're going to talk about that in a future lesson, but definitely something important. And there's a lot of other great things in here which we'll talk about over time. But right now, let's go into fields and relationships by clicking on it. And what it shares with us is all of the fields that currently exist in the contact object. And so here they are. And some of these we'll probably already recognize because we've just looked at them. But the one we really need for our purposes doesn't exist yet. So what I'm going to do as an admin is I'm going to roll over here. I'm going to find the new button at the top of Field and Relationships, and I'm going to create a new field. And it's going to ask me, first of all, what kind of field do you want to create? Now, this field is going to be relatively simple. It's just going to simply be a checkbox that whoever's doing data entry can simply click on or off if the person is already a VIP member. So I'm going to come down through my list of different fields, and we'll get a chance to talk about all of these in future videos. But I'm going to say, let me go and find something that is going to be a checkbox. So very simple, all right? So I click on the radio button for checkbox here, and then I'm going to click on the next button, and I'm going to go in here. And this is where I'm going to give my new field a name. And I'm going to call this something like VIP member, right? Maybe even a question mark after that. Are they a VIP member? And I'm going to say, when this form comes up, I want this value to remain unchecked. I want the person who is entering data to choose to check it, but they don't have to uncheck it. And I can come in here, by the way, if I click down here, it's going to bring down an API-friendly name, field name, VIP member, in case somebody ever needs to write to this field from outside of Salesforce. And here we can put a description. And a description, again, is something that might help the person who's laying things out understand what the heck this is. And we'll simply say, this field controls the toggle for VIP membership, or something like that. It matters more what it is you do within your organization. But underneath it here where it says help text, this is an opportunity for you as an admin to be able to help the person who's filling out the form, right? Whoever the end user is, to better understand how to use what they're using here. So we would say here is, check this box if the contact, in this case, is a VIP member, right? And so this will be help text, and I'll show you where this shows up. And that's all I'm doing here. So I'm giving this object a name, this field, in this case, a name. And when we are able to find it, we'll be able to understand what it's all about. I'm going to click on the next button. And what it's going to do now is it's going to say, okay. But within your organization, there are a whole bunch of different types of users. And there are all these, what we call profiles, which we'll talk about in future lessons. And a profile is really a breakdown of kind of who are you within the organization? What tools do you need in order to do your job? Because it stands to reason that not everybody within the organization is going to need access to all of the tools, right? The person who is starting off in a summer internship doesn't have to have the same capacity that the VP does. Let's say something like that. And so with these different profiles, these determine what people can access, what they can see, and what they can do. And we're going to simply come down here. You'll notice that some, we're not going to say, hey, don't make it visible for that person, right? So if you're a custom portal manager, you don't get a chance to see the contacts object. Now I will point out one other thing just while we're here. You'll notice that there's a possibility of setting something to visible, and there's also the possibility of setting something as read only. And please understand that if I come in here and say I want this to be read only, I can't read it if I can't see it. So it's always going to have to be visible. So if I click on this checkbox, notice that this checkbox lights up as well, right? And if I say this is no longer visible, then you can't read it. So in this case, I could come in here and say, the contract manager, I don't want this person to be able to edit any of the contacts. I want them to be able to see them if they need to, but they cannot make any changes. And so this is how I can control this on a more granular level. Now we're not going to worry about that here. We're simply going to come down and say, hey, I'm the system admin. I want to make sure I'm going to be able to see these changes. And so that checkbox is visible for me, and that's going to be good. And I'm going to click on next. And the last thing it's going to ask us is, hey, when we go into the different layouts, where this form is laid out, is there a particular place or is there a specific layout you do not want to include this on? And the answer is currently, no, I want to put it on all. So for the marketing team who has their view of layouts, or the sales team might have a different layout, or the support team may have a different layout, I want this to be included on all of their layouts. And once I'm done, I'm going to click on this Save button. And now, if I go back in my fields and relationships, and let's scroll all the way to the bottom since this starts with a V, we now have something called VIP member as a brand new field. Now I want to point out something else while we're here, and that is right over here, you'll notice it now says VIP underscore member underscore C. And what that tells me visually is that this is a custom field. This is something that I made. It did not come standard with Salesforce, and as a result, there are a few things that I can do with a custom field that I can't do with a standard field. So for example, we have here phone. Phone is a standard field that comes with all of the forms. Now I can choose to hide it, but I cannot delete it. You'll notice there's no tools over here to allow me to make the change. But my VIP member, if I wanted to come over here and edit it further or even delete it, I have that choice because it's something that I made. I don't want to delete this because I want to see what it's going to look like in action. But what I can do now is I'm going to get out of my admin view by going back into my app launcher, and I'm going to go back into the sales app. And now if we go to our contacts object and look in here, let's just say we're going to create a brand new contact. So if I come in here, there's some information, but as I scroll down, we can see now the VIP member field that we just created is sitting here. And there's also a little I here which provides us with additional information, and it gives that help text that we put in there to the person who's doing this. So they're like, I'm not sure what goes in here. Oh, if they're a VIP member. Oh yes, let's make sure we check that, etc. Okay? So really this is the process. In order to add new fields, we simply have to go in as an admin and add them into our form. Now we'll talk in a future lesson about how we can come in here, and maybe we don't want it here. Maybe we want to move it up further and include it, by the last name or whatever we want to do. I'm going to show you how you can lay things out differently. But for now, our default, that looks pretty good. We have some information. We don't have enough information on this contact, so I'm going to cancel out of here. But when we come back in the future, we'll get a chance to play around with this a little bit more. Now, as you can see, adding a new field to an object is not crazy hard, but there are some steps that you're going to have to remember. And also from an admin standpoint, you're going to have to think about who should I share this content with, right? Not everyone is going to need this, so do we give it to everybody? And in a future video, we'll talk about how we can change things in the layout so we can make sure that, once again, people see what they need in order to do their job. Anyway, I hope you found this lesson easy to follow. And speaking of follow, we'd love to have you follow us. So please click on the subscribe button. We drop 2 videos every week to help you strengthen your understanding of how to use Salesforce, and also if you're studying for your certification as an admin, to give you the tips and tricks you need to be a rock star in that area. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.